If you guys have driven a Squarebody, I guarantee that you have dealt with this, the infamous loose steering wheel. Yeah? Look familiar, 21? Well, it's a couple of things that could have gone wrong, and today I'm going to dive into it and show you guys how to repair the slop in your steering wheel. Here is the column out of my Blazer that I replaced with an I Did It column several years ago. This guy is obviously, as you can see, broken, and that's the challenge with this. It is an aluminum and steel construct, and so if you're not careful, you can end up breaking either the collar down in here, which this bolts to that tightens everything up, or you can break this guy, and then you're kind of out of luck. These things are hard to find. I mean, you can pull them from junkyards, but they often need a rebuild. So if you can take care of your column, treat it well, you'll get a long life out of it with no problems. And they're fairly easy to service before you break anything. Once you break some of this stuff, all bets are off. There's just a few tools that you're going to need to do this job, or tools that will make your life a lot easier. First and foremost is going to be this guy. This is going to be used to depress the plate that is holding the retaining spring in place. You're going to thread this down over the center nut on the column, or center bolt on the column, and then use this wing nut to depress these legs, which will hold the plate down. And then you can use some picks, screwdriver, pliers, assorted needle nose, whatever it takes to get that lock ring off. It can be a little finicky, and these guys can make a huge difference. The other thing you're going to want is a steering wheel puller. The steering wheel puller will go over the column like so. This guy is driven down inside, and then this pin pushes down on the column while this pulls on the steering wheel and pulls your steering wheel off. These guys are very useful to have. Just grab them, put them in your toolbox. You'll be happy they're there when you need them. The other thing you're going to need is a Allen key set and a Torx set. I recommend just buying an assorted set of Torx. These are the ones you're going to need. This is a T30. This is needed to remove some Torx heads inside the column. And then in addition to that, you're going to need an E8, which is right here. That's what these guys look like inside. Let's see if I can get you you see that guy? That's what you're gonna want to tighten the bolts when we get down to it. 1/4" drive is the best way because it's as much thinner than a 3/8. So if you can get a 1/4" drive, you will be ahead of the game. So E8, Torx, steering wheel puller, and lock ring plate depressor. All this stuff can be had for probably 50 bucks. It's not that expensive, and these are good tools to have in your toolbox. Do not use the steering wheel to pull yourself up into the truck. Use your A-pillar. Grab your A-pillar when you get up there, because otherwise you're eventually going to break the steering wheel, and it's a pain. You basically have to buy a new column or spend a couple $100 getting it rebuilt. Let's take this one apart and see if we can fix it. When you put your steering wheel puller on, put the washers under the bolts that correspond to the holes that you've got. Make sure it's lined up so it's not going to torque. And then you're just going to tighten this guy down until your steering wheel comes off and you're left with that. It's going to make your life a whole lot easier if you have one of these tools. This is to help remove that snap ring down in there. And to get it out, so let me back this off. You'll see as I back off this wing nut here, you'll see this plate is held on by this. So to get that snap ring out, you need to depress the plate so the snap ring can come free. It's possible without this tool, but it can be a pain in the neck. Combination of pliers and picks are usually the best to get this guy off. And then you can release the wing nut. This backing plate's going to come off. Next, you're going to want to remove these T30s from here, here, and down there. Once those are out, you're going to get to this one right here. Can you see that one? That one is going to release your lock assembly. And then once you've pulled your column adjust, this assembly should slide off. So this next part is a little tricky, but don't stop. You're doing awesome, so just keep it up. To get this assembly off, you're gonna have to remove these two bottom panels. It's just 2 or 4 screws on each side, just not very difficult. Remove that stuff and then undo this guy so that you can slide your connector back. And that will give you enough slack that you can get the safety collar off and from it. Now, some stuff will fall out of this. See? So I'm gonna have to figure out where that goes, but don't stress it. You're doing awesome. Do you guys see that one down in there? So, look how, so I'll get you to zoom in there. But you see how loose it is? That's our problem right there. Let's tighten this guy up. This particular bit is an E8. That's what you're gonna need, and then I'm using a 1/4 inch drive to get all the way down in there. I think I've still got another one to get to also. Okay, so it looks like we had success. No more movement to this thing. So let's button it back up. And hopefully it functions the way it did when we took it apart. That's the real test, right? Once you've got everything back together, make sure to put that lock ring back in. You'll need the tool to push down the plate and get it seated. And then you should be ready to put your steering wheel back on and celebrate how awesome you are. Now, after you have finished, I want you to make sure that you have some spare parts left over so that you can practice pulling it apart and putting it back together one more time. You thought the lesson was over. Now go ahead and tighten it up again and take a look around and notice that you do not have any spare parts, because you did an awesome job. Give yourself a high five. I want to give you guys a quick run through of the names and parts of my steering system, because I'm going to be fixing the cockeyed steering wheel that has been plaguing me. I have to drive down the freeway with my steering wheel 90 degrees off to maintain a straight direction. And that is because my draglink and tie rod need adjustment, or my draglink needs adjustment. So in my situation, we're looking at the top down, so a bird's eye view. You're going to see your tie rod connecting the driver and passenger side. Then you have your draglink that goes from the pitman arm. This is your steering box, your pitman arm. Then you have the draglink that connects over to your steering arm on your passenger side. The steering arm is connected to the tie rod through your knuckle, which is hard to visualize on the top down. On the head-on approach, so looking at the truck from the front, you're going to see your tie rod connecting your driver side wheel, your passenger side wheel. You have your knuckle right here, your steering arm right here, and your drag link going back to your pitman arm and your steering box. The only thing that moves or that dictates the movement in here is going to be your pitman arm. When you turn your steering wheel, the sector shaft on your box turns and drives the drag link one way or the other, and the tie rod comes along for a ride. Now, this is an aftermarket steering setup. I am not a big fan of the Squarebody, the original factory steering. It takes the drag link and it moves it to the steering arm on the driver's side. And that involves a lot of linkages and joints and just areas for inherent slop, looseness, and problems to arise. So this is generally what I recommend to pretty much anyone. If you're getting a Squarebody, get rid of the factory stuff and go to a drag link and steering arm setup. This is called high steer. This is called crossover steering. Sorry, high steer is when you bring the tie rod up above the knuckle, so that would ride up here. This is called crossover steering or high steer. It's one of those. I always get them confused. Anyway, these are the components that are moving. What we can do is we can shorten the drag link, and that will change the orientation of the steering wheel. Let me show you on our next whiteboard. Man, I should have been an engineer with these high quality drawings that I'm throwing up for you guys. This is a steering wheel. That is how my steering wheel looks right now. So when I'm driving, it is clocked counterclockwise 90 degrees. That is so I can maintain the wheels being straight. What that means is I turn the wheel counterclockwise, the steering column comes down to the steering box, and out of the bottom of the box, the sector shaft pushes and pulls the drag link. What I need to do is shorten this distance. So I'm gonna take maybe 1/8 of an inch or one turn out of the drag link to bring this steering wheel back into the correct orientation. It looks a little more complicated than it really is. It's actually very, very simple. I'm gonna show you guys right now how we fix it. But you've gotta do some mental gymnastics to figure out which way to move your drag link to get everything to line up again. Now let's go out to the truck after we've got all this in our head and do it in real time. Yeah, as you can see, this is how my steering wheel is when I'm driving down the street. But at least it's not loose anymore. Let's fix this. It's important when we start for you to get a visualization on which way this lock nut turns. You can see the threads right here. The reason being is the driver's side and passenger side are going to be opposite threads, so that when you turn the drag link, it's not just going to push it both on one way or the other, it's actually going to suck them together. So I'm looking at this thread pattern and I can tell that I need to rotate this counterclockwise to loosen this guy. Okay, now that I have both of the lock nuts undone, I am going to tighten this guy, which means I'm going to move it. One. Let's try 2 full rotations. That's kind of difficult with one hand here, but whoops, sorry guys. Okay. Lock these both back down and go take it for a test drive. There you have it. Rolling down the street, nice and straight. Well, I hope you guys feel accomplished, because if you just followed those easy steps, you have just fixed your steering. These trucks are not that difficult to work on. They just require a little bit of patience, brute force, and some creative thinking. I do recommend that if you are looking to upgrade your Squarebody and you have not addressed your steering yet, make that a priority. I think that you can dramatically improve the function and the performance and safety of the vehicle, of the Squarebody, by replacing all of the old outdated steering linkages and all that jargon malarkey mess. If you have not seen my other videos on steering, I'm gonna put a link to my first video up here where I went through exactly what crossover, high steer, and all that is. Make sure to go check that one out. Hit subscribe, give me a comment, you know the drill. and we'll see you next week.